Hi, and welcome to the description of the director. The history of the director has evolved quite a lot since the beginnings of theater. Directors fulfill both artistic and technical roles nowadays. We're going to talk a little bit about what happened in the past, but now when you think about it, the director has an artistic vision, but they also have to have technical tools, at least technical knowledge and skills, or very keen organizational skills, for example, to get them through. So theater directors have evolved through three historical phases. First, teacher directors passed on knowledge of correct techniques, particularly from the Middle Ages onward. They really saw the director as somebody who had a knowledge of exactly what the play was supposed to look like. There wasn't a lot of innovation involved. It was all about the way that you stand correctly when you're emoting certain emotions, and the director was the one who passed on that knowledge. You can see how that's definitely different. Now we have more realistic, then we had more realistic directors. This coincides directly with the realism movement and Stanislavski and the idea that we're trying to get to the psychological state of the acting. And so rather than focusing on the movements so much, they were really trying to get into the psychology of the characters. So they attempted to create an aesthetic realization of reality, and they introduced psychological interpretation, and they wanted to make sure that the actors had the same kind of interpretation as the director does for the character. Then with the postmodern movement, you're starting to get into more stylized directors. They're going to think more in metaphors and images and expressions. So this was more associated with the anti-realistic playwrights' emphasis on expressionism, abstraction, and symbolism. Today's director follows no prescribed rules and as such has limitless possibilities. So each director has their own little way of doing things. There's really no rules to follow. Okay, the next slide talks about the director and producer, the preparatory phase. So the first thing the director does is spends a lot of time with the script before they even get together with the actors. And the producer, it's sometimes a different person who helps them put their team together, and they collaborate before rehearsals begin. First they select the play, and this is done in various ways. Sometimes the play is given to the director, sometimes the director gets a say in what they want to direct, and this is based on their capacity to obtain the rights and the interest of the intended audience. They're always thinking about, what do our audiences want to see right now? What do I feel like doing? And also, what's possible to do? You can't necessarily do a play, for example, that's brand new on Broadway because you can't get the rights to do it. You have to be able to pay royalties to the playwright and all those kinds of things, and they try to limit that in various areas. So you have to make sure it's legal to do the play before you can do it. Then the conceptualization of the play. This is a very important thing that's done before rehearsals start. The determination of a core concept. And we'll talk a little bit more about what a concept is. Possibly a high concept. Maybe it's very, very broad. Maybe there's a really big message that's being told, and we're going to try to figure out how to do that through not only the acting, but the costumes and the set and things like that. As an organizing principle, a way to bring all the designers together, make sure everybody's on the same page and telling the same story. Then there's designer selection. Sometimes this is prescribed to the director by the producer. The producer says, here's your team, go. Sometimes the director gets to pick and choose who they work with. It totally varies depending on the kind of organization you're talking about. In a college, for example, it's going to be the staff. Whoever's hired to produce the plays is going to be the design team. And sometimes students are involved in designs as well. Director-designer collaboration is where they turn ideas into a concrete reality. So they have lots and lots of meetings and they say, how are we going to represent poverty or something like that? Or how are we going to represent fatherly love, and they'll figure out what that looks like and how they want it to look and feel. And they usually bring lots of different art history movements into it. They'll say, I really like Art Nouveau, or I really like postmodern art, and I want to make sure that's part of this play. And then casting is one of the final things that they do. The actors present prepared monologues. We've talked about that before, and then they read for the role. This is a very, very important part of the directing job, because if you cast a play well, then a lot of your work as far as the directing of it is done, and the actors get free rein, and they get to create the characters that you want them to create. Okay, so the training of a director, there's a variety of ways to enter the profession. Many directors start in another theatrical role. One of the most common is acting. A director who's had a lot of acting training is going to be very successful. Today, many directors emerge from training programs and they seek to develop their imagination, strengthen intellectual conceptualization. How do they broadly look at a play? To impart a sense of theater history, it's really important to understand the historical progress of theater in order to be a director, and to create familiarity with the design process, because again, the director is the team leader of all these designers, and they need to know how to talk to designers. So to be an accomplished director is to be a well-rounded expert of the theater. So the more training you can get in all aspects of theater, including backstage and stage managing and running the light board, all of those things are really going to be helpful as a director. So I have another thing I want you to look at in this unit, and that is an example of what director's concept notes look like. This is taken from a production that I did recently where I typed out some notes and I gave them to all of my designers, and I said, this is what I'm thinking intellectually for the play. And then I let them go and design what the play looked like based on that description and some images that I gave them. And then I want you to look at the photos of what the play turned out to be, and you can see how the notes translated into the photos. And you'll be thinking about that when you write about the show that you see and what kind of conversations must have taken place between the director and the designers in order to tell the story. So have fun with all of that.